We actually lowered our costs and increased our production by working in sync with Mother Nature.
Listen to your mother. Keeping the soil healthy and the water clean helps things go swimmingly for this Iowa rancher.
The moon need a fix-up, a cleanup.
From sea to shining sea, many of our national treasures are in need of some serious sprucing up.
These are the places that define America.
And in New Mexico, a place to get away from work and get back a little of your soul.
A few safety things. Be very careful getting in and out of the raft.
Can't hardly wait.
Neither can we. This American Land starts right now.
Hello and welcome to This American Land. I'm your host, Ed Arnett, and it's great to be back with you. We've got some terrific stories coming up about the conservation of America's natural resources, our landscapes, waters, and wildlife, and the people who are dedicated to conservation across the country. Our first story today is about America's national park system, a priceless treasure that's the envy of the world. Many parks are in desperate need of repairs, and the system's backlog of deferred maintenance now totals billions of dollars.
The importance of Grand Canyon National Park to this region, it's hard to overstate it. It's essential to this region. People come from around the world, and we have over 5 million visitors a year coming to the south rim of the Grand Canyon. My name is Danny Giovanni, founder and owner of Catula Outdoor Gear Products, based in Flagstaff, Arizona. So much of the economy has grown up around that asset for us. The park is a well-worn, well-used, well-loved place that could use a lot of help with some of the deferred maintenance, absolutely.
Our road systems and our facility infrastructure systems were installed many years ago as the park was being developed and established. And over time, we've just not been able to focus in delivering the service that's needed to maintain those systems. But here on the Grand Canyon, our primary focus or our primary issue that we have to deal with is the Trans-Canyon pipeline.
When this pipeline breaks, it's go time.
We gravity feed 1.2 million gallons a day across the Grand Canyon through 16 miles of aluminum pipe from one side to the other. And it's 50+ years old, and it's starting to wear out. So under those high pressures, it breaks quite often. Some years we get lucky, it breaks 3 to 5 times. I've seen it break upwards of 20 in a year. The challenge in fixing it is getting to it. The whole team's trying to figure out what we're gonna do to replace this thing.
So here at the National Mall Memorial Parks, we do everything we can to keep up with the preventative maintenance requirements of all our assets. It's tough. My name is Sean Keneally, Chief of Professional Services at the National Mall and Memorial Parks. So what we're seeing here is the tidal basin seawall, where in various sections it has sunken to the point where every high tide, we are inundated with the Potomac River water. A couple years ago, the ceiling of the portico at the Jefferson Memorial had some stones that had fallen. And that was just due to some water intrusion that was leaking through the roof. Luckily, no one was harmed. The park has since made some temporary repairs while we wait for funding for the roof project, which will then prevent future stones from falling.
But now you can see that there is netting to protect the space in the area. Here at the Jefferson, there's over $80 million worth of needed repairs and upgrades. I am Catherine Townsend. I'm the president and CEO of the Trust for the National Mall here in Washington, D.C. Every member of Congress I've talked to just loves the National Mall, and they love the national parks. No one would argue that they're not important. But with all the other budget needs, you can understand why the Park Service is just limited to a certain amount. You know, the demand is so great. That's where private philanthropy comes in. That's where the trust comes in. That's why we've been an important piece to the puzzle to fix this issue. What the trust does is to help educate members of Congress.
it's important that Congress appropriate some type of funding to maintain this beauty.
I wonder why it hasn't started. Why aren't they doing it now?
We can't wait till things fall apart. We can't wait till the roof cracks and the pieces start to fall. We can't wait for the tidal basin to rise and flood the area. We have to deal with it now.
It was on the mall that Martin Luther King Jr. shared his I Have a Dream. And we're still dreaming in America. The mall must be repaired. The mall need a fix-up or a cleanup. We are here in downtown Atlanta. Martin Luther King Jr. was born right here in this house on January the 15th, 1929. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. I'm John Lewis. Good to see you. I serve as a member of Congress representing this district for almost 30 years. I love this church. And sometime I would be here and Martin Luther King Jr. would be preaching.
And you know, you see people over and over again.
He taught us the way of peace, the way of love. And sometimes I feel like when he died, something died in all of us. He was our leader.
We had a leaking roof there in the church, and as a result, a lot of plaster on the walls have been damaged. We have a massive backlog, and just trying to keep up with it is sometimes very challenging.
So what you had here, in effect, was rich folks and not so rich folks right here on the block, right in front of the King Kids' home.
In August of 2016, we were giving a tour, and while they were standing there in the birth home, we heard a crack sound.
So let's go inside now.
The floor had dropped a couple of inches, that the floor had, maybe a joist had broken, and so we had to close it. Now that we have completed the work on the floor, our goal is to continue to maintain it. It's always costly, particularly for the government, to repair something than it is to maintain it.
Those of us in the Congress, Democrats and Republicans, and the public, the private sector, the business community, foundations and others must come together and raise the necessary dollars.
Yes, you know, the government builds roads, schools, but I think it's also responsible for carrying forth American culture.
One thing America is very good at is a spirit of philanthropy, so it's important that both governments and individuals work to maintain our heritage.
These places, they tell the story of our people, of our land. I am very hopeful. I am very optimistic that with a new Congress, a new administration, and with the demand of the American people, we will get it done.
Now we'll take a look at the Mississippi River Basin, where the river and its tributaries are carrying nutrients, particularly nitrogen and phosphorus, from urban and rural areas down to the Gulf of Mexico, where the so-called dead zone is growing larger every summer. The nutrients cause algae blooms that choke off oxygen in the dead zone, making it difficult, if not impossible, for marine life to survive there. We'll go now to a farmer in southwestern Iowa who wants to find a solution to this problem by preventing nutrient runoff, starting with his own farmland.
Farms, when you get down to it, are really living systems. That means if we do a lot of things right, then production takes care of itself. But if we focus on production, it usually fails. My name is Seth Watkins, and I raise cattle in Taylor County, Iowa. Our farms as living systems are sustained by natural resources. Mine is sustained by sunlight, rainfall, soil, and my own ingenuity. It's a beautiful Monday morning in Taylor County, Iowa, and I'm really tickled today because my daughter Tatum is joining us, and she's going to be helping us move a group of cattle. And basically what we talk about is rotational grazing. That means about every 5 to 7 days we move the cattle to a new pasture. It allows the grass to rest and recover from the grazing, which actually is really good for soil health and stimulates more grass growth. And then it also gives the ponds some time to rest and recover as well. And it really follows what Mother Nature would have done when you followed the migration of the bison. You know, they didn't stay in one place very long. They literally were moving every 12 to 24 hours. Spots! They're coming now. We had a really nasty blizzard here, and it was March 11, 1998. I can remember it very well. The cows were miserable in those conditions, and in the aftermath, I asked, why am I working against Mother Nature? And we made the decision to move our calving date to about the 10th of April, which was more natural for our time. I wanted to do what was right by the cows and by the land, and I really wasn't concerned about my profitability at that point. But the neat thing that happened is when I made that decision, we actually lowered our costs and increased our production by working in sync with Mother Nature. Hey, buddy. And started to become a more profitable operation from that point on. Daisies. Well, that was my entry into what I'd call ecological solutions. And then from there, I learned about the principles of conservation agriculture. You know, the key principles are no-till or minimum tillage of the earth, crop rotation with 3 species or more, and keeping the soil covered with cover crops as long as possible, ideally all year long. There's a beautiful little song sparrow right there. And then there's a fourth area that I think is just as important. It's not always talked about as much. Farming in a method that enhances our wildlife. So what we have here is a riparian buffer, and what'll happen is that the water that runs off is going to go into this little ditch that we see right here, and that acts like a giant filter. You know, think about how the roots of this grass go down, and they're able to actually capture the nutrients before they make it into the water system and into the stream. Any rainfall that falls on my farm, so we're talking about the water and how it moves downstream, is going to go to a little stream right down the road. That stream is going to make its way to the West Nottoway River, and the West Nottoway River is going to flow about 70 miles to the Missouri River, and from there it goes right to the Mississippi. So, you know, once it hits the streams, for lack of better words, water's liquid and it moves fast and it gets there. Come on, Wally. I think sometimes we think because we're 1,000+ miles away from the Delta, from the Gulf, that what we do doesn't have an impact. But we have to understand that this is how watersheds work. And if something leaves my farm, I'm responsible for it. An area this massive, even though we maybe don't feel like we put that much on each acre in terms of nutrients, when you compute that over the millions of acres that we're putting down, that's a lot of stuff going downstream. This is like the offensive line right here. This is protecting the source. So we've captured a lot of sediment in that pond from the runoff from the neighbor's field. But that's really not enough when you think about the volume that moves in some of these areas. So now we come below it, and we've got a very big pond that we've built to catch more of the nutrients. So now you can already see the algae around the edge. See how much smaller it is? So already, it's starting to do its job. I'm gonna take you to my favorite place. And this is the last step before it goes to the stream. You know, all these plants and insects and everything interact together somehow to make this work. This is the water from that farm field that's gonna walk into the stream that goes to the East Nottoway River, that goes to the Missouri River, that winds up in the Mississippi watershed, and eventually the Gulf. And this is how we're trying to protect it, and I hope more people can as well. I really believe this problem can be fixed, but it's not going to be fixed as long as we have a totally production-focused farm bill. In my mind, for our farm bill to be successful, it has to focus on the regeneration and protection of these natural resources. We can't feed people without healthy soil, and I don't want to live in a world without clean water. I'm the 4th generation of my family to care for Pinnock Farm. My daughter Tatum is the 5th generation.
That is Ira Shambaugh. He's my great-grandfather.
I'm very proud of my family's legacy, and especially my grandmother, Jessie Field Shambaugh, who is credited by many as being the founder of 4-H.
It's just a really cool thing, and it still exists now, but it also helped to encourage good farming practices.
And her motto was always to make the best better. We're finding practices that do keep the nutrients on the farm where they belong. We're finding practices that are less reliant on fossil fuel. We're finding better ways just to care for our livestock. You know, I want far more out of me than just beef. I want to make sure that I've got clean air and clean water and all the things it takes to make this a good world to live in.
There are now 117 protected areas in the United States, known as national monuments. They're located in 31 states, ranging in size from just a few acres to millions of acres in the case of marine monuments in the Pacific. Monuments protect a wide variety of objects of historical, cultural, or scientific interest, each of them designated by a president or an act of Congress because of its special and irreplaceable value. We'll take you now to northern New Mexico, where the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument was designated by President Obama just a few years ago. We'll join a group of journalists rafting down the river through the monument, learning what makes it such a special place.
I think that there are certain places that are just so special that we have to leave them as is. This isn't just a river, this isn't just some sagebrush and some trees, this is a way of life for a lot of people. My name is Nick Strite. I own Taos Fly Shop, and we do fly fishing trips here in the Rio Grande Canyon and elsewhere in northern New Mexico. We wanted to bring down a group of writers and different people from different media sources to really show them what we have here in the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument.
Queso, queso, cheesy, cheesy.
So that they can share with their readers and their viewers how special this place is and why we need to continue to have it protected. The Rio Grande del Norte National Monument has been in existence for four years now, maybe more. There's some conversations happening on a national level about some of the national monuments that have been created by President Clinton, President Obama, whether or not they're warranted.
There's a lot of flat water out there. There's a couple rapids.
We just want to tell our story. Rather than a case of federal overreach, this was a case of the federal government really listening to the people.
All right, everyone stretched? Ready?
Everybody said, we want this. This is going to be good for us. This is going to be good for business. This is going to be good for a place that we all care about and protect it. And the federal government listened. Yeah, watch your step.
These yuccas are sharp.
We start to get a few views of the river here. All the talk that's been going about the monument, generating a lot of buzz and getting people here. And that's really, for us, translated into, I think, just a town in general, a lot more business.
I'm gonna start pumping.
I think that's one of the things our monument designation has done for us, is it's really gotten a lot of people together to talk about a resource.
A few safety things, be very careful getting in and out of the raft.
Can't hardly wait. You know, my goal is to catch a few fish.
Okay, guys, everybody back paddle two.
Everybody go forward.
Yes. Hi, I'm Steve Harris from Pilar, New Mexico. I'm the executive director of Rio Grande Restoration and the president of Farmland Adventures, a rafting company. I guess I'm the geologist. All these moundy-shaped mountains are little volcanoes that have spewed successive lava flows all into this gorge here. And what occasioned this is the tectonic plates are moving apart slowly. So we're actually on the eastern edge of a volcanic rift valley. It's the largest rift valley in North America. This is the water supply for probably 15 million people in the United States and Mexico.
You can paddle this boat.
You're all set, aren't you? You're rigged. You go fish.
I'm Brad Powell. I'm the Southwest Region Director for Trout Unlimited. There's 150 plus national monuments. Simply put, national monuments are special places in this country. They can be created by Congress, they can be created by the President. Some are small, some are large. But these are the places that define America.
Pretty gorgeous, ain't it?
These lands are Bureau of Land Management lands, but these are our lands. Across the country, all of us own a piece of these lands, and the President has this unique authority to designate these areas as places that we're going to care about for years and years to come. And that's what he's done here using an act called the Antiquities Act. And this particular national monument, many of the communities around the national monument have been severely impacted by a mine closure. And they have a need to find a new economic sustainable base.
I think there's a lot of concern in general in the state about how our public lands are used, and that applies to the monument and to other public lands throughout the state. I'm Rebecca Moss. I'm a reporter with the Santa Fe New Mexican, and I think some people really feel strongly that public land should be public and as open to the public, as free to the public as possible, and others feel like that federal ownership infringes on private rights.
A lot of people think that national monuments were created as a result of the federal government grabbing private land or state land to create these monuments, and that's just not true. My name is Katie Enders. I'm a journalist with the Guardian newspaper. Federal land designations affect federal land. So I think that's probably the biggest misconception that we come across, is that national monuments were the result of some sort of land grab.
Many people confuse them with national parks, and it's their belief that you can't fish or you can't hunt or you can't camp without severe restrictions. That's not the case in national monuments.
I'm an angler. I can fish on monuments. I'm a hunter. I can hunt on monuments. My name's Andrew McKean. I'm the editor-in-chief of Outdoor Life magazine. There's not widespread prohibitions on the recreational use of these landscapes. And to me, if they've got that one additional level of protection, they're not going to be sold off. They're not going to be exploited for energy development. To me, that's the core of the Antiquities Act. We're preserving the landscape that is ancient and an antique.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah? You better shove off. This seems a possible pretty splashy rapid right here.
My dad came to northern New Mexico back in the late 60s and opened up a fly shop in about 1980 in Taos.
You talking about Comanche Creek?
Right now we employ over 20 people between our two shops. Taos is not a big economy, so, having a half a dozen fishing guides and people in the shop working for me and making a living is a big deal in a town like this. We also bring in a lot of people to fish that spend nights in hotels and eat at restaurants. And there's a lot of money that gets spread around the community just by having this attraction here and this place to come fly fishing.
If there were no like rafting or outdoors or fishing stores or anything like that, I do feel like part of Taos's identity would sort of be removed.
Water is life. Water brings people to different locations, and we have this amazing river that people come from all over to see.
2 juvenile herons are up in that nest. That used to be an osprey nest. I've fished and guided in many places throughout the world, and this river still remains one of my top 5 rivers, if not the top river that I've ever experienced in my life.
Every monument has at its core something really worth preserving and essential and worth celebrating. I think my audience, and me too, question some of the large scale of some of these monuments. These things are often named at the very last days of a presidential administration. It looks like it's a legacy from a president that's leaving office and has no political capital to spend anymore. And it's just a stamp and identity on the landscape. I think the great thing about the opportunity to review monuments is an invitation. If you've got a perspective on it, speak your mind. This is the time to let your voice be known about it.
The goal of a national monument is to ensure that these lands are going to be there for our children and their children, and that great treasures like this river remain open and available for the public into the future.
This is so much a part of our identity as a people. And on top of that, I mean, this is federal land. This is as much mine as it is someone from Arkansas or someone from California. You know, this is an important place, and once it's gone forever, so we need to keep it.
Now here's a quick look at stories from our next show.
I think if people understand the past a little bit more, they're more likely to protect it.
Climb on in. We'll show you how these archaeological sites at the Bandelier National Monument are getting an upgrade for a new generation.
That's all for now, and thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on This American Land.
For more information about this program, visit thisamericanland.org and like us on Facebook.